welcome back to the Governor's Podcast. It is Olivia D. Hines here, and I'm flying solo with this one. Partly because it is now March 2026, and the last time myself and my co-host Sharon Warmington, released an episode on the Governor's Podcast was September 2024. So if you're a new listener, then this could be your first episode that you're encountering. And just to let you know, there were many other episodes before this one where you often heard two voices at the very least. And on occasion, we were accompanied by a guest speaker, particularly in more recent seasons. But if you are a returning listener, then I can appreciate that this format is a bit different for you. And it's not to say that this is the new format moving forward. But as you can appreciate over the last 18 or so months, because it hasn't quite reached 2 years yet since our last release, life has been very intense, very busy. There have been lows, but there have also been many highs. And I can imagine that, like anyone listening, juggling priorities can be extremely challenging and in some ways disheartening because things you used to do, things you could so easily or made an effort to make time for, you may not be able to anymore, or at least for a season of your life. And I feel that's what happened with our podcast. It naturally wasn't a decision we sat down and made because we still believe in serving in this way. And we still have so much to share and so much to say and so much that we're learning about the space of governance and the sector of education specifically. It's just that with different things coming up for us individually, I want to say collectively as well on a personal level, but on a professional level, we haven't done that much together, because of the individual things that have come up. So both individually and collectively, life has become even more full, which has made other things. I really don't want to say fall by the wayside, but more like the volume has turned down. I love a good analogy. And that's what I would say has happened with the podcast. So I am here recording an episode that has not the topic of the episode that has been on my mind for a while, but just the act of recording without trying to figure out how myself and Sharon can get together on a day and a time that is so convenient for both of us. Basically, organize a meeting for the two of us to sit down and have a conversation about governance in some sort of constructive and organized way. So I thought, let me just record, seeing as though I edit the episodes. So I thought, let me see if I record and if I'll edit it and if I'll share it and just go from there. Because we are both still governing. We govern in our work, we govern in our volunteering and we govern in our lives. And I don't really want to speak for Sharon in terms of what she has had going on over the last 18 months, which has been a huge amount. So it was right for us to park the podcast for a while. But in speaking for myself, I am still governing at a secondary school where I'm now vice chair. That has changed since we were last on the air. I am still the chair of a committee. I now have different link governor roles. And in the last 6 to 9 months, governance has felt shifted for me. It feels as though it has deepened, widened, and in many ways become more pronounced. And it's something that I'm really sitting with, really, really sitting with. If I take you back to September 2024, I believe in that episode, I may have shared that I started writing and I started writing governance fiction in particular. It's not a genre that's established anywhere. Obviously, governance comes up in stories and novels and screen writing and also books all over. But in terms of an explicit genre that stands alongside, I don't know, crime or romance, it's not established in that way. But I was starting to find my rhythm in making governance a bit more tangible for people. Obviously, the podcast was one way of doing that, just stripping it all back and talking about the real of being in this space and the commitment, not just in time, but in energy and in effort to really sit on a board at school level, at academy trust level, in a college or FE, a university, for a corporate, for a charity, just where you show up and get involved in those strategic conversations, making decisions that impact so many lives, people who don't even know that the room exists, let alone whether they can walk through the door and take a seat at the table. And so I felt like, okay, I show up, I live and breathe this in my own roles, in my own way, as one person. The podcast allowed me to reach more people, people who I may never cross paths with, but if they just happen to tune in and get something, then that's part of the impact or the legacy building, part of my purpose, my calling to turn a light on for people in dark places and plant a seed somewhere in someone. So then I wanted to explore other mediums, and writing was one of those ways, but I didn't want to do nonfiction. I didn't want to write a textbook on governance. I feel like there's so much of that, and I don't know, it just, to me, not to take away from anyone who does this already, but for me, like to make it really authentically Olivia, I just couldn't see myself writing the theory of governance without it having some sort of juice, some sort of creativity, some something that just connects to people. And so I thought about turning what I have learned, what I've experienced, what I have heard, what I have seen, what has come up for other people that I've encountered, what I've observed into stories where the scenarios are very real and very possible, maybe a bit dramatized, but the root of it or the sentiment, the essence can be felt, but the characters aren't real and the institutions are fictionalized. So that you're then making it a bit more tangible. You're making it personable. It's expressive. And it's like, oh my gosh, I see myself in this character. I see myself in this storyline, or I can understand this, or I really don't like them, but I know that they exist in this space. So that was the second half of 2024. And I was doing some other things, some other professional development and personal development, um, which then took up a big chunk of my time and my energy as I was recalibrating. And then beginning of January, I was realigning and getting back into the rhythm of the goal that I set to write a manuscript of 100,000 words. Had the character, the storyline, the plot, the chapter structure, the feel, the narrative person or the narrative voice I wanted to write in. So I was in a groove. And then from the beginning of April to the middle of May, I was writing every day, or at least reading some of what I had written, but I was pushing that word count. It had taken me 12 months from April 2024 to the beginning of April 2025 to write 20,000 words. And then I did 20,000 words in a month because I was on it. So from the beginning of April to about mid-May, I had doubled it and I reached over 48,000 words. I was in a groove. And then mid-May, no, not mid-May, late May, Succession became more real in my real personal life than I could have ever anticipated at that age, in that moment. Just completely unexpected, so sudden when my father passed away in the latter days of May 2025. And one of the things that hit me strongest was that the character that I had been writing for the previous 12 months, where I had nearly 50,000 words written and a lot more written in my head. She was a vice chair of governors for a secondary school. March 2025, I became vice chair of governors of a secondary school. And she had lost her dad within recent years of the timeline that the book starts. So when I got the call and when I sat with it in those first days after the realization that my dad's timeline has stopped, there's, there's going to be no new experiences or memories with him physically on Earth. I felt my character and it was really hard to open that document, that manuscript again, because I was scared, very, very scared. I had fully mapped out who I wanted her to be before even entering 2025. And she was so different to who I was. She was in her late 40s, early 50s. She was a white woman who was a leader, not just a leader, CEO in the industry of science, specifically biotechnology, married with three children, a son and twin daughters. She had a dog. Like, just all these textures. She wasn't me. She wasn't me. She was the kind of person that someone real me, would expect to see in a boardroom. Until I started being in boardrooms, seeing someone like me wasn't the norm. So therefore, I wrote what was the norm or what is the norm. That was the character that I felt the strongest pull towards. Okay, let me explore a character who people would expect to see in a space before they would expect to see me. So she was very different to who I was. But then the two things that we share, or the two very key details about her became realized in my own life, and I became scared. And I said, I can't write anymore because I'm scared that something else may become true and I can't control what about her life is going to also mirror in my own. So I stopped writing governance fiction and particularly that manuscript for weeks, maybe even months. I think July, I may have braved opening the doc at one point a few weeks before my dad's funeral. I think I read a little bit or wrote a little bit. And then I just started to just write, 400 words on a character over here because I'd start to hear characters' voices and I'd just write a piece in that moment very spontaneously and then share it on LinkedIn and some people engaged with it, which I really appreciated, but the manuscript, I just stayed far away from it because I was thinking that character, that territory feels very vulnerable, very, very vulnerable. But I kept governing. I continued to attend meetings and read meeting papers and visit school to do link governor visits and do training and applied for multiple board roles, positions, opportunities. And one of the ones that I applied for, I was successful with. And so I now sit on the board of trustees for a university's students' union, which means I've now governed in primary school, governed in secondary school, and now governing at university level. And how I see that is with my own governing practice, my own governance journey, I can map the journey of a student from reception right through to graduation, more or less. So a 4-year-old right through to 22, give or take. So my journey cannot stop, even though there are days when I feel so full or I feel so empty. I feel tired, and then I'm reminded of my why I do what I do, why I show up, why I put myself in spaces where I can be visible, I can be seen, so that someone else can see me and say, oh, I belong in that space too. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I'm in my early 30s and no longer in that percentage of volunteers on governing boards who are under 30, which I really struggled with at first. But then I thought, okay, I'm in my early 30s. I can continue to be of service to those who are entering governance for the first time, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and empower them to know that it is possible to govern from a young age. You are the voices that are needed. Generational diversity can still be the thing that I champion, advocate for, even though I'm no longer in that age bracket, because this year, 2026, I will reach 10 years in governance. It was 2016 when I started my corporate governance course straight after graduating from university. I believe it was February 2017 when I took the exam and I passed. And then later that year, leveraged my knowledge of corporate governance into education sector and started my governance journey in the chair position of the primary schools board. And then fast forward to today, when I'm very honest that not every day looks great or feels great. I love being in governance and I am extremely enthusiastic about people getting into the space and evolving in the space and wanting to serve people in different ways. But I'm also a human being who sometimes has to just pause, sit, evaluate their own resources, prioritize and deprioritize, reflect, challenge myself, stretch myself, and be very transparent and say succession in real time in your personal life is hard. It's hard. And my new normal, my new reality is that I am grieving whilst I'm governing, but the two continue to help me grow. So, yes, we haven't posted an episode on the Governor's podcast in 18 months. And I stand by that. I stand by that. sometimes you do need to let something go or put something on mute. And in other areas of your life, you need to pick something up and put one step in front of the other. So for me, that's consciously aware how hard it is for me to get out of my bed every day, and I still do. For me to stand on a train track platform and hear the voices of characters, but I don't have a pen or paper ready or a laptop ready to write down what I'm hearing or what I'm experiencing to really capture that fiction, or being sat on the sofa and reading papers for a meeting that's coming up. Mm. Constantly juggling. We're all navigating life in our own respective ways. And so I want to wrap up this very random, very spontaneous episode to just say thank you. Thank you for the grace that everyone has extended to us. If you've remembered us, great. Thank you. Appreciate you. That I can say from both myself and Sharon. Um, but as I said, I don't really want to speak for her on what the last 18 months has been like for her. And this has a very different tone to our other episodes. And I feel it needed to. This is not me feeling as though I need to explain or justify our absence, but more a case of in this moment, this is what I feel like I needed to pick up the microphone and hit record and just let it fly. And if one person listens, amazing. But if no one does, I've done this to tell me that I can still do this. And sometimes that's all you need. That's all you need. Just validate yourself because only you really know what it is that you're trying to balance internally anyway. So that's it from me. Um, if I do continue to do episodes, um, I will still share them on a Wednesday morning so that it's there. Um, but I'm not over thinking or over re-strategizing anything because that's just gonna compound the fullness that I already feel. So I'm flowing. And so if you want to flow with me, then you are welcome. So no takeaways, which is usually a part of the format we've had in previous seasons, because I feel like the whole episode was a takeaway for me. And so with that, I say take care and be well until next time.